let us move along. Let's say hello to our next guest. He was on the call this Saturday in Moscow, first event for the UFC in Moscow, sixth largest attendance, over 20,000, huge success, headlined, of course, by Alexei Oleinik submitting Mark Hunt via rear naked choke. And I wanted to talk to John Gooden about this because he's traveled all over the world calling MMA events. And I caught my eye when he wrote something on Instagram about how crazy of a journey it was to just get to Russia and to do this whole thing. And it's such a unique place. So I wanted to get some insight from our good friend, John Gooden, who I'm told is actually doing this interview right now from the luxury of his bath. Is that accurate, John?
Well, you won't know because apparently Skype is no longer magical.
No, it's not no longer magical. It's just under construction. And you would know something about that, John. You're the guy who flies home on like 2 hours sleep and then you go start building houses. It's unbelievable. You're a real Renaissance man.
Man's got to do what man's got to do, as we say over here in London. So, I would splash in a bath for you, but it would be a bit off-putting for your audience. But how are you, my friend? Are you well?
I'm doing great, John. Always great to hear you on the call. I am fascinated. First, let me ask you this. This is the proper way to start the interview. How's fatherhood? Delighted for you and your wife. I'm delighted that you're finally, parents to a lovely baby. How's fatherhood treating you?
It's really good. Yeah, I felt it this week being with the UFC. I was away from my little baby girl for a few days. That's the first time I've had an extended trip away. So when she's changing on a daily basis. So yeah, I've come back and she's noticing things a lot more. She's grabbing stuff a whole lot more. Her vocals are changing. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, we're blessed. We're very lucky. And I'm cherishing every moment.
That's great. Well, again, Mazel Tov. I'm very happy for both of you. It was great news when you shared it with the world. So you're in Russia. You get to Russia. You alluded on Instagram, as I said, that it was quite the journey. Could you tell us how difficult it was to actually make it to Russia and call this event?
Well, listen, I mean, I'm only coming over from London, but there were some challenges. The visa issues were a bit of a problem, and unfortunately, because of the administration process on the other end, I mean, I literally picked up my visa and my passport, I guess, on the way to the airport to go to Fight Week. So if anyone knows me, I'm an anxious person when it comes to stuff like that. I'm the guy that's at the airport minimum 2+ hours before a flight. There's no way in hell you're going to get me to go to the scream through. I have to be settled. I'm a panic traveller. In that sense, and it was uncomfortable, but it was a late flight as well, 10 p.m., got into the hotel at about 6 a.m. I was supposed to start working at 9 a.m. the next morning, but fortunately, the good people at the UFC covered me until about 11, so it was an interesting start, but I was just grateful to be there in the end.
And what was the atmosphere like, John? I'm not even talking about at the fight itself. You were there for a couple of days. Are people aware that the UFC's in town? Clearly, there's 20,000 plus who are aware because they were there. But sometimes you get a sense for it on the street. You get a buzz, especially when it's the first one, and it's in a new place. This all kind of feels different to everyone. What was it like for you? What did you sense?
Well, first of all, have you ever looked at Russia on a map? The place is absolutely huge. So in the UK, to cross a road, we have to go across 2 lanes, at worst maybe 4. To cross the road over there, it's like 10 lanes. So I might not have felt whether there was a big buzz in the place because it was simply ridiculously huge and everything takes so long to get anywhere. You might be a better place to ask Paul Felder because he went to like a fan expo and did a signing, and from what I understand, there was a lot of people there and the interest was great. Around the hotel, it was very business-like. There were some very scary-looking individuals. Everyone in Russia is really big, and there are a lot of stone-faced individuals as well, because I guess their job was security and stuff like that. But there was a lot of anticipation around this, and what I mean by that is no one really knew what they were heading into, and I think that's indicative of any promotion when they go into a new market. They can't take all of their own kit. You don't have it all your own way. So from a technical standpoint, you're using stuff that's local. How's that going to work with the way that we at the UFC do things? So that people were a little nervous, but actually Credit to everyone on the ground, from what I understand. After it was challenging getting to Russia, but I think once we were there, for a lot of departments, it turned out to be, easier than they thought.
In the arena, does it feel like your regular European event, or is there a different vibe?
No, it was a different vibe. It really was. I've been lucky to go around to a real variety of places with the UFC and with Cage Warriors, and I called some fights in the Ukraine, in Kiev, many, many years ago, much smaller venue, and I could hear my voice echoing back around the arena. It was deathly silent. It was horrible. And then I was in Chechnya for an event with Cage Warriors as well, and it was super intimidating and intense. So I really didn't know what to expect, and my research going into this card was be very careful what you say about Russia, because it's such a complicated area. It's some very, very delicate political issues as well, and you can't really judge what Moscow is going to be like on the experiences that you might have seen in Kiev or Chechnya. So let me tell you this, that crowd was un-freaking-believable.
Wow.
14,000 people were in there for the first fight. 14,000 people.
Wow.
I mean, they were treated all the way through the card, I think. But the atmosphere, it was the Olympic Stadium. It was the very last event in that stadium before they pulled it down, or they're pulling it down very soon.
Wow.
It was, it's very old looking. It's a very old looking building, and they've got contemporary construction next to it where apparently all of the workers are going to be staying while they pull it down. And just behind that was this beautiful, large-scale new mosque as well. So there's a real kind of different sense about the place, new and old, and obviously the future of what was happening. The place smelt old. It looked old. The colour scheme was old. But that was very cool, because that meant that there was so much tradition in there. So many people have been there before and had achieved success, and there would have been heartache for many people, and people would have experienced these incredible events in the very place that we were unlocking the Russian territory, if you like.
Wow. So they're actually tearing that thing down any day now? That's wild. You guys have the distinction of being the last event there. That's a pretty cool thing.
I think so. And, I mean, I hope I'm accurate on that. Please don't tell me if I'm not, because I want to live with that as well.
Please,
I
yes.
kind of like the idea that we rolled into town and had this fantastic event, and everyone was happy from the UFC side and from a fan perspective, I think, in Russia. So, yeah, let me have that.
Okay, fair enough. I won't fact check you on that. Just curious, did you get a sense that, everyone's talking about Khabib, people are asking about Khabib and Conor and things like that, or is, with maybe the language barrier, the fact that he's Dagestani, I don't know. Did you not get a sense that this was a big deal over in Russia?
Yeah, this was a big deal. Khabib is a big deal. MMA is a big deal. If you can gauge from the crowd, they know this shit. Like, they know the nuances. They know when a choke is nearly in, when it's on its way in, when someone's defending it and they're not in trouble. And they knew that in the cheap seats, in the nosebleeds, they knew that. So, of course, they're interested in this Conor Khabib fight. Absolutely. And I was asked a number of times. Dan and Paul Felder were asked a bunch of times as well. Who have you got? What do you make of it? Yeah, I mean, it was a question on everyone's lips. Okay.
By the way, speaking of your teammates, Dan Hardy, who, of course, you're very familiar with, but Paul Felder was added to the mix as the lead guy, as the play-by-play voice. And this may be a little too inside baseball, if you will, for our audience, but I'm just curious about this stuff. Challenges, benefits to working with a three-man booth as opposed to a two-man booth. I thought you guys flowed very well, but from your perspective, I know it's a little different. What did you think about going three-man deep as opposed to two-man deep?
Yeah, I didn't really know how I felt about it, because one, I love to challenge myself. I want to be the most rounded broadcaster. I want to get to a position where I'm the very best at what I do, so I need to do these kind of things. I feel like there's sometimes not a lot of space when Dan and I are commentating fights, and we always leave stuff on the table. So you add another person to the mix, and I just thought that I wouldn't get what I wanted to say out. But that wasn't the case. I was really surprised. If I'm honest, I think the length of the walkout really helped me because it was super long, 2-3 times, probably twice as long as it normally is. So that allowed me to do some storytelling at the front end of the fight so that I could get a lot of information out there, which I'm very passionate about. I go after the story, if you like, the narrative, and I need some time to get that out. And when you've got 3 of you, that becomes a challenge. But, yeah, you know what? I just felt it. I think we all did. We just went with the flow a little bit. It was important to me that we had fun. I didn't have a very fun show in Hamburg for a lot of reasons. And I guess I still come at this from like a bit of an athlete perspective. And, if you have a bad fight, then you're always thinking, 2-3 bad fights and, the UFC are going to be really out of favor with you. So I'm always looking to come back strong. And I had a really good time. It was so good working with Paul as well as Dan, of course. And I proved to myself that I would enjoy that 3-man dynamic. It does add different flavors to the broadcast. It gives a completely different perspective sometimes. And it alleviates some of the burden. I'm not a lazy broadcaster, but at the same time, I've just got another out. If I haven't got something quite to the forefront of my mind, I can hand that over to another person, and the fans are going to be satisfied, probably more satisfied than if they heard my drivel.
Now I have to ask, why didn't you have a fun time in Hamburg?
It was a lot of stuff, which is probably, really boring for people to listen to. But let's just say there were a few kind of personal things leading into the fight week, which made it a bit difficult for me. But technically, I struggle with certain setups for audio reasons. I have a bit of vertigo and some inner ear imbalances. And, yeah, some stuff happened, and Dan and I weren't actually sitting very close together. It wasn't how we normally had things. And, it threw me. And it was I think we had 9 decisions as well. So, yeah, a lot of it was about my lack of energy on the night, which I don't really know. It's never happened to me before. But I guess these things will come and go in your career. And I proved to myself that with such a high energy environment and a high pace to the fights, that was a one-off. And I should know better. I've been doing this nearly 10 years now. But I'm pretty hard on myself, Ariel, when it comes to this gig.
No, I appreciate that. I feel like I'm the same way. So I think that says a lot about you. You're a perfectionist. You expect the best. I think we all appreciate that from you. Whose performance impressed you the most on Saturday? There were some really good ones. Obviously, Oleinik coming back from those brutal shots to the leg, to the face, of course. Jan Blachowicz. Peter Yan is always fun. Who impressed you the most? Who gets your MVP?
Well, I mean, he might not have won, but Jin-Soo Song's chin, I think, gets some other props there. Jeez, what a fight that was. I mean, you've obviously got to give it to Peter Yan. You have to. That kid is very special, though, he's, as I was saying in the broadcast with Dan, he's probably going to have nightmares about not putting that guy away. But Son is just a freak of nature, and that was one of the most entertaining fights that I've been octagon side for. So that was great. I think it's worth giving a shout out to Magomed Ankalaev. He had a bit of a nightmare in his debut and then came back with just a beautiful piece of mixed martial arts combination work to get his win. So that was really nice. All through the card, there are a lot of cool stories. Jordan Johnson's submission finish as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, I really enjoyed the way that he got that to stick. So, yeah, it was. Blachowicz, he's a guy that I've sort of been around the UFC a similar sort of time to 2014. I've seen his career ebb and flow a little, and I have to say, despite the language barrier, he is one of the nicest, most humble guys that I've met on the road. So it's always nice to see people achieve success, especially when they've had to go through some stuff as well to come out the other side of it. So just on a personal level, it's nice to see him doing so well right now.
And I'm just curious, John, and I sort of mentioned this at the top, but you still do work as what, an electrician?
No, so that might be a bit misleading. We've got a double-story extension on the side of our own house and a single story on the back happening right now. So it's February. I had the builders build the shell, but then I've taken over kind of everything internally. So I've drawn on my old skills and tried to learn some new ones. It's been a challenge. It's been really tough. I was enjoying it at first, and now it feels like a noose around my neck because we're in rented accommodation and we have the baby now and we need to get back there and all kinds of stuff going on. But yeah, it's tough, man. I'm trying to balance everything and it takes me back a few years. It really does. But, you know, I'm not the young man that I used to be, but we're pulling through. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I thought you were making house calls and stuff upon landing, and I was curious about just like the mental, you know, the roller coaster that you go through, like from the high of being in an arena, 20,000 people, and then you're working with plywood and all kinds of things that I don't understand. So I see that on your Instagram. I'm like, how does this man do this? How do you go from that life to this life? But it sounds like you're not as active in the construction life these days. You're just doing it for personal use.
I'm doing it for personal reasons. I do still help my dad out with his business, and that does drag me back down to a slightly darker place than, you know, the just elation of Fight Night. But yeah, I've spoken about it before. I have gone from, you know, early hours of Sunday morning celebrating a European fight show to then being on a building site on Monday morning, and you know there's nothing positive to look at. It's like it's debris, the air's thick with dust, the noises are horrible, they're not cheering fans, and that was it was a turning point personally for me to kind of go all in on this and take a few hits, but in the end it's paid off in the long term. This is just something I've had to do for my family and to save costs. It's a financial thing mostly, and we're nearly there. The house is looking good.
Keep up the great work, John. It's always great to catch up, and I always feel like it's a special event when you and Dan are on the call. You guys do a phenomenal job. Your insight is amazing. I love the way you call the fights. I'm not just saying it because you're on the phone. I would be saying it if I was just recapping the event. So kudos to you. Well done, and always great catching up. We'll talk to you very soon. Again, congratulations on the baby.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And congratulations to you on the news show as well. Doing great stuff still. Thank you. Trailblazer you are, Ariel. A trailblazer.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that so much. And it sounds so nice when he says it in that accent. There he is, John Gooden, the play-by-play man for the UFC, one of the many great ones that they have. Of course, John Anik at the top of the list. He is their main guy. They've got John Gooden. They've got Brendan Fitzgerald. They've done a really nice job, I think, of cultivating some talent.